A report was published under the title Video Violence and Children from a group that called itself the Parliamentary Group Video Inquiry. Now that title's important. They were absolutely not a parliamentary group. They did have one or two MPs, Tim Sainsbury were, for example. They did have a couple of lords, but they had no official status at all. However, calling themselves that, and indeed holding their meetings on parliamentary premises on a number of occasions, meant that they came with the imprimatur of being a parliamentary body.
Tonight, the parliamentary inquiry team said they were so worried about the effects of videos like these.
The story of that is really quite extraordinary. The PGVE employed a man who worked at Oxford Polytechnic called Brian Brown, who was himself a Methodist minister. And Brian Brown worked in a television research unit doing research on young people and television and education. And he agreed to do this research for them, but he was nervous because at the meeting where they set it up, there were two conflicting points of view. One point of view said, we need to get empirical evidence. Just how many? How often, how easy is it for them to get hold of it? What do their parents know about it? Things like this. Empirical evidence. The other group wanted to assay the opinions of police, criminologists, social workers, moralists, to say how dangerous are these. Now, those two do not sit comfortably together. The man who directed the project was a man called Clifford Hill.
A lot of children are seeing the video nasties, the really obscene, violent films, at birthday parties, in the homes of other children.
Clifford Hill increasingly overrode any research decisions. And eventually, when Brian Brown challenged him on this, Clifford Hill broke into the Oxford Research Unit, stole all the papers, the computer tapes, and made off with them, and then retrospectively fired the Oxford research team without ever giving a reason. Oxford Polytechnic protested and got nowhere. Now, when the report came out, what is very interesting is it made a whole series of claims. One in particular made the headlines. It said 40% of 6-year-olds have been watching video nasties. Wow, what a headline.
We never anticipated that it would reach 40% the figures being seen by children. This has shaken us.
And you can imagine what the phone calls to me said when I was confronted with this. I had a long series of conversations with Brian Brown, and I was able to read all the documentation that survived because fortunately he kept backups of a number of things. And what emerged was that the figures were entirely bogus.
To ensure the accuracy of their survey, more than 6,000 children and their parents were interviewed, and at least 2 schools visited in every county across England and Wales.
At the time that they had released this report, they had had just 47 replies to a questionnaire from 6-year-olds. 3 of them said that they had seen some video nasties. Between them, these 3 children said they had seen 17 films. Divide 17 into 47 and you get nearly 40%. That is how they produced a figure which was then front page on the Daily Mail and on most other newspapers and was cited endlessly in the parliamentary debates.
That there you have all this research, and not only research, common sense.
Yet video nasties are so widely available that 45% of children aged between 7 to 16, that's 3 million children, have seen one or more of the banned films.
These figures are 100% accurate.
It was fraudulent.
Cliff Hill's report, whether it's right or wrong, I don't really know, and I don't particularly care.
We've been trying to get video nasties for a long time, and they're very, very difficult to get hold of. And so it seemed extremely unlikely that 40% of children from the age of 6 years old could have seen a video nasty. And when we saw the questionnaires that were used by the Parliamentary Group Video Inquiry, it became very obvious what was likely to have gone wrong with the research.
And a researcher called Guy Cumberbatch did the very simple thing of going to local schools in the Birmingham area and simply taking a list of films which mixed together real titles with absolutely bogus ones.
We found that 2/3 of them claimed they'd seen films which never exist.
What's the Hospital of Horrors like?
It's a bit scary.
What sort of film is it?
It's got a lot of blood in it.
A lot of blood.
I can't say much about it, really.
And what he found was that more than 2/3 of children volunteer saying that they've seen films that don't exist.
I remember lying to my friends at primary school that I'd watched Quatermass and the Pit, which my parents wouldn't let me go anywhere near when I was about 8. And it's exactly the same thing just happening in the 1980s, 30 years later.
And I'm not ashamed to say it. I said it at the time and waited for them to sue me. They never did. I'll say it again now. It was fake. But it was sufficient, with the other things that they said in that report, to get that thing unargued through the House of Commons.